Good morning and welcome to the White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here attending virtually. It is good to be together, near and far, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I am Owen Dom, I use he, him pronouns, and I am a member of our board of directors. Our ministry team will be running Cyber Social Hour beginning 5 minutes after the postlude. The Zoom link is in the chat and on our website. It is a 20-minute session of conversation and sharing designed to provide a deep and intentional welcome to all. Children and youth, as well as adults, are welcome to attend. We will have a special breakout group for our youngest members. If you have a request for today's meditation, please place it in the Zoom chat box. If you are new today, please fill out a guest card. You can find that in the link in the chat box or on our website. And please be sure to sign up to be part of our e-news mailing list, where you'll learn everything happening here at WBUUC. We are happy to announce Self-Guided Soul Work Wednesday. This will take place in person at the church every Wednesday this month and next from 3 to 6 p.m. This is a choose-your-own-adventure time of spiritual care and nourishment for all ages and is designed for folks to be able to drop in as your schedule allows. Participants will be able to walk the labyrinth, write their stories, set an intention, share with a small group, and meditate in the sanctuary. All activities will be physically distanced. Worship will continue to be virtual all next week. Stay tuned for more information for the rest of February. Besides myself, service participants today include Reverend Sarah, Reverend Roger, Nico Van Ostrand, and Joanna Eccles. Behind-the-scenes support from Aaron Scott and Reverend Sarah. Music today is from Stephen Wallach, the WBUC Choir, and the OK Factor. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where you can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Joanna Eccles will lead us in our chalice lighting today.
1 year ago today, my sister, my dad, and I sat with my mom on what would be her last day. We listened to a playlist of favorite songs curated over my parents' 62 years of marriage. I flipped through a tiny spiral notebook from my mom's bedside, including her notes from checking nest boxes. Box 2, top of hill, nest, bluebird. Box 4, sticks, 4 brown eggs, wren. Box 5, just bees. Box 7, swallow chicks, look healthy. Plus hundreds of other observations, fleeting, of plants, animals, insects. That tiny notebook, just one artifact of a life full of interests and talents and contributions to art, science, and culture. I've been intentional about sitting with these items, appreciating them, thinking about the time in her life they came from, how old she would have been. I think about their move north from Georgia in their late 20s, intentionally to put themselves among people who challenged them artistically and intellectually, and who were thinking like they were, of equity and fairness, of dads in the delivery room, of women like my mom pursuing the career of their choice, hers in design. I think of them creating a wildlife sanctuary among farmsteads and finding those off the beaten path, off-season rentals where the birds gathered and the crowds were light, west-facing, and always getting back for sunset. So I light the chalice for intentions, the big and little choices that make up our lives.
Join me in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Join now in singing our hymn. If I can stop one heart from breaking in singing the living tradition, number 292.
If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting, Robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting, Robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain.
One of the things I love about stories is that they almost always have something to teach me about my life. If I'm experiencing a problem, there is usually a story that can help guide me to an answer. This morning's story is especially special because it is a story inspired by the youth of this community and the covenant they create together. Whenever a new group gathers for religious education, we begin by creating a covenant. Be kind, lean in, lean back, share from your own perspective, have fun. Now, covenants are hard. They challenge us to try our best, but we recognize that most of us struggle to do everything listed on the covenant 100% of the time. And when we fall out of covenant by not reaching those aspirations, it often happens that someone gets hurt. And I'm sure you have all experienced this before. So for a moment, imagine with me what it feels like in your body when someone says or does something that is hurtful to you. For me, it's a pressure in my chest, and because I cry easily, there's a tightness in my throat as tears make their ways to my eyes. It's really not a fun feeling. Now imagine what happens to you in your body when you realize that you have hurt someone else. For me, it's a tightness in my stomach and in my throat and a warmness in my face, and all I can think about is how to make that feeling go away. If I had to put a name to that emotion, it would be guilt. We don't make class covenants in youth group to ensure that the youth will never ever make mistakes or cause accidental harm. And because of this, we've come to realize how important it is to include something that can guide us when someone messes up. In most of our class covenants over the years, you'd find a line in there that reads, "Oops, ouch," which we use as a guide. Oops and ouch are two very little words, and they admittedly are rather too small to deal with something as complicated as guilt or feeling hurt. So maybe saying that this line in our class covenants is a guide for what to do following harm is not quite accurate. A guide is usually something like a map or a tour guide that shows you where to go from here and helps you get back on track if something goes wrong along the way. That's a very big and important role, too big, I think, for the words that are as small as oops and ouch. So instead, let's imagine a pair of doors, those big dramatic ones that you can throw open for a grand entrance. One door is oops, and the other ouch. And in front of those oops, ouch doors is the youth group. They're gathered in covenant with one another and about to mess up. Wow, that was a really useless comment you just made, says one. Ouch, says the other. That comment really hurt my feelings. And the ouch door swings open. Oh, oops, says the first youth. And the oops door swings open. But that's not the end of the story, because stretching out before these oops, ouch doors is the path of accountability. Saying oops and ouch wasn't enough to make the hurt youth feel better or to help the original commenter get back in covenant, but it did open the doors to the apologies and forgiveness and edits to the covenant that follow. I don't think anyone would say that the path on the other side of the oops, ouch doors is clear and straightforward, but it does exist, and opening the doors of oops and ouch is the very first step.
Join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Find a comfortable place for your body. Engage your senses and connect with the physical space you're in. Aim to find a center, a place of balance within you. Gather courage. Open your heart and mind. This is a time for calm, breathing deeply in the knowledge that we are held by this community of care. Let's take a time of silence together. In this community of care, we hold these members and friends. Mary Carlson, whose 91-year-old father, Francis Peterson, passed away January 22nd from complications of dementia. Sharon asked us to please send healing thoughts to Dan. He is recovering from surgery to remove a tumor located at the base of his brain and is waiting biopsy results. As a community of people living, struggling, supporting, and caring for one another, we hold each other's cares with deep concern. So into and out of this silence, speak the names of your beloved so that you can share them with us and we can share them with you, and we can hold all as part of our community of care. We hold them all in our hearts. Amen. Your gifts to this congregation are many and varied, including the gift of giving your time and talents Today, we ask for the gift of your treasure to help sustain the work of this congregation as we grow our souls and serve the world in love. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together. Our reading is Winter Morning by James Cruz. When I can no longer say thank you for this new day and the waking into it, for the cold scrape of the kitchen chair and the ticking of the space heater glowing orange as it warms the floor near my feet, I know it is because I've been fooled again by the selfish, unruly man who lives in me and believes he deserves only safety and comfort. But if I pause as I do now and watch the streetlights outside flashing off one by one, like old men blinking their cloudy eyes, if I listen to my tired neighbors slamming car doors hard against the morning and see the steaming coffee in their mugs, kissing chapped lips as they sip and exhale each of their worries white into the icy air around their faces, then I can remember this one life is a gift to each of us. Each was handed and now are told to open, untie the bow and tear off the paper, look inside and be grateful for whatever you find, even if it's only the scent of a tangerine that lingers on fingers long after you finished peeling it. We are so grateful for our co-music directors, Olivia and Carla, who bring us fantastic music each week. This piece we're about to hear was written early in the pandemic as a tribute to frontline workers. It's called Vital Signs.
One of my favorite Far Side cartoons is one that shows several flying saucers. One has landed and 3 aliens are coming out of that saucer onto the Earth. They look kind of like walking arms with legs, with their looks like hands sticking up. A farmer named Roy greets them. The caption is, inadvertently, Roy dooms the entire Earth to annihilation when, in an attempt to be friendly, he seizes their leader by the head, which looks like a hand, and shakes vigorously. Roy's intention was very good. His impact didn't land very well. And in this case, the world was annihilated. Well, understanding that there's sometimes a disconnect between our intent when we say or do something and how it's received, the impact on another person. Well, it's not rocket science to say that happens every now and then. Surely we can all think of some time when we did or said something that just didn't land as we intended. And I doubt it's a stretch to say that this probably is a pretty regular occurrence. I can think of lots of times of disconnect between my intent and the impact of my words or actions on my life partner of 32 plus years. Some of these mistakes should have been obvious. This comes in the what was I thinking category. Others were mistaken assumptions on my part, and still others seem to be aspects of my life that, for whatever reason, I apparently need more than 32 years to figure out. Here's an example of being well-meaning but painfully missing the mark in a different important life relationship for me. When I was a freshman in college, a loved one came out to me as gay. I actually already knew this because I happened to be present when they came out to a couple other loved ones on a phone call, and there was no way to mistake what was being said on the other side of the line, even though I didn't hear it, and the person who came out didn't know I was in the background. So I could tell where this conversation was going to go several months later, and I thought to myself, I can spare this beloved having to share this uncomfortable and maybe difficult truth. So I held up my hand, cut them off, and said, no need to tell me, I already know. I assumed that this was a loving thing to do, that somehow it would signal my acceptance. I even felt sort of virtuous in my inclusive spirit. I wasn't really paying attention amidst my sort of self-congratulations, but if I had been, I probably would have noticed that the response in their body indicated an ouch, but I was oblivious. So fast forward a few years. I'm sitting at a PFLAG meeting, parents and friends of lesbians and gays, and several LGBTQ folks are sharing their stories of coming out. And as I listen to story after story, my heart sinks. I sink into the chair as I come to face with this big oops moment in my life. Nico's bodily picture of how they experienced guilt was pretty much spot on to what I was feeling then. Tight stomach, flushed face, sweating, desperate desire to escape the room. I realized sitting there that the likely impact of how I responded to my loved one coming out was probably not what I intended. My saying, stop, no need to tell me, probably came across as, I don't want to hear your story. The loved one may have wondered if I didn't want to hear their story because I somehow found being gay distasteful or shameful or immoral. Sitting at that PFLAG meeting, I realized that I had a lot of internal work to do. My spirit was not inclusive. I didn't just make a mistake because I was out of sync with my soul. My soul had flaws. The mistake I made was anchored in flawed understandings, flawed attitudes, and a flawed theology. Sure, there are worse things I could have said or ways I could have responded, but what I how I responded was pretty terrible. In some ways, I've spent the rest of my life trying to atone for so badly misunderstanding the impact of my words and the flaws within me that underlay that misunderstanding. And so I'm grateful for these opportunities to atone. And I'm also mindful that some of my efforts to atone also have missed the mark. So PFLAG wasn't this sort of, oh, now I've got it moment, but it was an ongoing invitation to dig into the work of not causing harm. I feel grateful that when another loved one came out to me decades later, I was able to respond differently. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't acknowledged the harm I caused, my mistake, and done the internal work that it called me to do. I think it's universal among well-meaning white people, me included, that we sometimes make mistakes in understanding the impact of our words and actions on people of color. Whenever I am aware I made a mistake, it is painful and it's embarrassing. You know, though, not really as painful as being denied housing or a job because of the color of my skin, or being shot because of the color of my skin, to put it mildly, but still, it is painful. It's especially painful when I realize that my mistakes are anchored in unfinished or unstarted soul work. When white people like me resist acknowledging and trying to learn from the times we've harmed people of color in spite of our good intentions because, well, it's just too painful, that is white fragility. If those of us who are white let our fragility rule us, then we will keep making the same mistakes. And these mistakes are one of the building blocks of systemic racism. This is why Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spent time going after white, well-meaning liberals who caused harm to Blacks and Black liberation in spite of their good intentions. No doubt there is also straight person fragility and cisgender fragility and male fragility and people without disabilities fragility and non-working class fragility, and the list goes on. If we don't have the strength to acknowledge and explore the impact of our words and actions, then we are more likely to keep causing harm. Well, it's good to focus on avoiding negatively impacting other people. It's also good to focus on some positive ways we can impact others, especially people who are systematically marginalized. This makes me think about being attentive to the pronouns, if any, people want to use for themselves. I love that this church finds ways to be intentional about this, that the board welcomer shares their pronouns, that it's on our name tags, that we take time at the beginning of small groups to invite people to share their pronouns. It took me too long to add my pronouns to the bottom of my automatic email information that pops up when I write an email. It took me too long to add that information about my pronouns on my Zoom box. But I finally realized at some point that it is helpful to know what pronouns, if any, people want used for them. I've always tried to call people by the name that they want to be called. If someone wants to be called Kate instead of Katie, I try to call them Kate. I mean, why wouldn't I do that? And why wouldn't I use the pronouns that people want to use for themselves? And why wouldn't I make space for people to be able to share what pronouns they use, me included? One important impact of this congregation having some intentional practices around our pronouns is that it signals in a small way that we value people being able to identify themselves. We respect what identity they name. There is power in being able to name your identity, especially for trans and other people who have often been denied this right and this respect. So this very simple practice highlights a value that this congregation cherishes. In this community, you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Our simple practices around pronouns help us bring life to these lines from our call to worship. I've been asked a few times here, why do we bother with these pronouns? We bother with them because the impact of this can make a difference. And honestly, it's not like any of us has to break a lot of sweat to do things like put our pronouns in our automatic email contact info at the bottom, or put our pronouns into the Zoom box. It takes about 2 minutes. Yeah, I have to remember to give space for people to share pronouns at the start of small groups. Again, not a hassle. What a small commitment for me to help folks feel welcome here. And I do have to, though, risk some discomfort, some embarrassment when I use the wrong pronoun for someone, even though they've told me the pronouns they want me to use. I sure hope I'm not so fragile that I back away from this practice in order to avoid embarrassing myself when I screw up. The bottom line of all this is simple. Our words and actions matter. If there really is an interdependent web of all existence, the things that we do necessarily impact that web. This is a faith statement for us. The web of life needs us to be willing to hear and explore ways that we fall short. The web of life needs us not to give in to a desire to keep ourselves, our fragile selves, from facing embarrassing mistakes. If we don't do this work, we will not be living as spiritually centered lives as we could. Nico's story today points to the beautiful reality that in this church, there are some people who have a lot of expertise in living in intentional community. You know, the kind of community where you can be gently but clearly called out for words and deeds that feel harmful and called back into community, into covenantal community. These experts in our congregation are our youth and our children. Just about all of their interactions with each other are guided by relational covenants. These covenants help them name and notice those ouches and those oops they experience. Doing so helps them live spiritual lives with greater respect for each other and for the fact of our interdependence. Well, in February, which is 2 days away, the adults at White Bear UU Church, hopefully with some help from our youth experts, will embark on a process of creating a relational covenant for the congregation. I hope that this will culminate with the congregation considering the adoption of a relational covenant at our annual meeting in June. And so I encourage all of you to check the e-news from last week and this coming week and commit to attending one of 3 upcoming virtual sessions where we'll get to brainstorm ideas about what might be included in the relational covenant. The first one will start a week from today at 12:30 p.m. All 3 are virtual. As the poet James Crew suggests in today's reading, the spiritual life is about more than our safety and our comfort. The spiritual life includes how not to harm other people. It includes trying to respect others. It includes trying to feel empathy for others. It's about listening, in the poet's words, to my tired neighbors slamming car doors hard against the morning and seeing the steaming coffee in their mugs, kissing chapped lips as they sip, and exhaling each of their worries white into the icy air around their faces. That, friends, is a wintry picture of compassion. Compassion. This is why understanding the impact of our words and actions matters. Compassion. I invite you now to join in our closing hymn, which is number 124, Be That Guide. Let's sing out loud.
Be that guide whom love sustains, rise above the daily strife, lift on high the good you find, help to heal the hurts of life. Be that helper nothing daunts, doubt a friend or taunt a foe, ever strive for liberty, show the path that life should go. Be that builder trusting good, bitter though the test may be, through all ages they are right, though they build in agony. Be that teacher faith directs, move beyond the old frontier, though the frightened fear that faith be tomorrow's pioneer.
My benediction today comes from James Magow. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace, seeking justice. I mean, go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean, go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. The sign that I use at the end of services for peace, I think, is a perfect sort of visual symbol of this kind of peace, the kind of peace we have to work for. And so in that spirit, may you go in peace.